We're overachievers, and
we're doing great.
Hell yeah.
Okay, you ready?
Hello.
Hi.
I'm ready. Hi.
Hello, Ella, darling.
Hello, Sovereign Syre.
Welcome to ILL REPUTE, the podcast that is a podcast about history, run by hoes, former hoes, current hoes, sucker free.
Hoes.
We support women's rights, but more importantly, we support women's wrongs. And we're here to talk about women that we think are cool and who we think did awesome shit. And yeah, that's what we're doing here. We're on episode 3 of Hedy Lamarr. It's very exciting because this is the first person we've profiled where you have written the script.
Yes, I am so psyched to finally get this out into the world. I have been so precious about this whole approach because I have some pretty big shoes to fill, some pretty glamorous shoes to fill, and Susie, and a lot to live up to as your co-host. I am so glad you don't have any sisters, any like little sisters, or maybe you do, and you just don't talk about how they off themselves in your shadow. But yeah, so hi, I'm Ella Darling. I am a former librarian, former VR porn pioneer, a sex worker, and Sovereign's co-host.
Yes, you are. And I'm Sovereign Syre. I'm a stand-up comedian. I am a screenwriter, a writer, a journalist, a podcast person, a painter, a former professional sex haver. I was in the commercial sex trade, i.e. I was in the adult industry for 10 years. And then I wrote a script and got in the union. And now I'm just a writer. And I talk about history with my best friend. And that's you.
We like to start our show by acknowledging the native peoples who have inhabited the lands on which we are recording. I am in Austin, Texas, on the traditional land of the Tonkawa, Comanche, and Lipan Apache peoples. And Sovereign?
Oh, I'm recording in East LA on the traditional land of the Chumash and the Tongva people. And it is essential to recognize the historic and ongoing presence of these native tribes, both as land's original caretakers and as enduring communities in the present day, because they are all still here and they are going through struggles, and they are a thriving, living, awesome culture that has really survived through basically an attempted genocide, and they are here and still drumming and still being stewards of the land. They're still protectors. They're at the pipelines, and like they say, they're not protesters, they're protectors. So, they're kind of on the front lines of climate change right now. So yes, support, appreciation, gratitude. Yes,
absolutely. How much do you remember from our last episode, Sovereign?
I remember that Hedy had some romances, talked her way into some jobs, kind of got some independence from her parents, spent some time in Prague where, baby made her first softcore porno. What back in the day used to be a Cinemax After Dark, I think would be kind of the equivalent. But it was like a high art film. It got a lot of awards. It got a lot of recognition, and it got her a lot of controversy. It upset her parents. She moved back in with them. She kind of was like right on the cusp of like stardom, thinking she was going to sign a contract with Paramount. And the movie came out, and it was kind of a scandal. And so while it was critically received, it was still a scandal. And we were talking a little bit about how she had sort of ambivalent feelings about her involvement with the film in later life. And then we were kind of talking about the impact of stigma around things like that, and how, actually very little has changed while so much has. Also, so much hasn't, in terms of how we feel about women that let other people see their naked bodies.
Yeah.
And that's where we left
You
off.
pretty much nailed it.
In spite of leaving the theater behind to chase her film career, the turmoil from her role in Ecstasy landed Hedy once more on stage. She starred in a musical comedy operetta called Sissy, The Rose of Bavaria Land. She was back in her element, the star of the show, and under the direction of a respected director named Fritz Kreisler. That's funny. She's Kiesler.
Well, he's Kreisler.
And he's
So in
Kreisler.
German, EI and IE, you pronounce the second vowel. That's
Okay.
like an easy. That was one of the first shortcuts I learned in German.
It makes absolute logical sense, just like English does, you know. Okay. So she was back in her element, the star of the show, and under the direction of a respected director named Fritz Kreisler. It was a departure from her last role, and she received immediate acclaim for her performance. And there's a lovely little picture of her. She's wearing a plaid skirt that clearly has some kind of tulle under it, or perhaps petticoats, and then this sort of fitted riding jacket situation with a collar and puffy sleeves and a cute little hat. And it's very much actually a throwback. So this would have been in the 30s, but they are doing a throwback to the riding outfit that a lady in the late 1700s would be wearing. It's very, very similar to what they would call like a riding coat or like a morning outfit. And she's stunningly beautiful. Dark hair. She's got the thin, long. Actually, you know what? I feel like my eyebrows are probably almost as long as hers because I'm weird. But she's got
beautiful.
She's got the very thin, very long, downsloped eyebrows, the heavy kohl, the mouth that doesn't have the rouge all the way on it. It's meant to make it smaller, but also kind of accentuate the Cupid's bow. So
kind of a button mouth.
Yes. So she's very much kind of, she's very, very stylish, very beautiful. It's kind of hard to say because like by today's standards, she's okay. She's attractive, but it's like, because we've seen like what you were talking about, beauty and novelty, because we've seen so much, because we also live in a world where like Giselle Bundchen exists, and we live in a world where Adriana Lima exists, and we live in a world where, you know, gosh, like the really pretty Lupita Nyong'o. We live in a world where there's so many different depictions of beauty, and with the internet, I mean, you can just pull up stuff that's kind of mind-blowing. But
you don't say this internet, you say.
What is a computer? I must imagine that at the time, because there just wasn't as much access to images of women, she's very beautiful, but it's hard to gauge like the impact. But I would imagine it was maybe like the first time that people saw Angelina Jolie, because there was something that was almost startling about it at first. I remember when Angelina Jolie like first appeared, and everyone was kind of like, it was like shocking almost, like how it was very disarming, like how I was reading a biography of Elizabeth Taylor once. Elizabeth Taylor's another person where it's like we're so used to seeing her, it's hard to imagine what it would have been like to see her the first time. But I was reading a biography about her, and another actor said it's hard to explain, but the first time you saw her, it was like being punched in the stomach. And that always like stuck with me as kind of a first impression. But I think, you know, it's hard when we're doing a history podcast and we're talking about beauty a lot and all of this stuff, to remember that beauty is subjective, and that beauty is also a lot of hype. If someone declares someone the most beautiful person in the world, and then that kind of goes around, that mystique comes around with you. You know what I'm saying? So, but she definitely looks beautiful, fully self-possessed, stylish, glamorous. And she already looks like sultry and knowing. She
has been described as sultry since she was like 14 or 15.
I think it just has to do with when you're smart, and because I think the same thing with you. There's something in your eyes that you can't get rid of, and it's that makes it very clear that there's a lot going on in here. I think there's something about like when people are like sultry, it's like what you're picking up on is kind of like a weird native intelligence. Like there's a lot going on in there. And so there's an intensity to the way this person is taking everything in. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. This is also from it's a promo photo from the stage production. So she's not styled necessarily for a camera. She's styled to go on stage.
Oh, okay.
So, and I think that probably impacts a little bit. I agree, though. I think in her youth, she was beautiful, but she wouldn't stand out to me on the street today, at least in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So I wonder if part of the director saying that she's the most beautiful girl in the world was also tacitly saying she's very complicit and very eager to find her shot. And that probably imparts a lot of attractiveness as an actress, because if she's so focused on, trying to make her next, rung up the ladder, then she's not going to be advocating for herself the way that she might if she wasn't so
Well, there's
invested.
also, I mean, beauty has like a kind of social dimension to it, right? And it's sort of like when a man knows that other men want you, then they want you too, right? So there's a social aspect. So someone declaring someone, so even if you look at her and don't see the most beautiful girl in the world, you're still looking to see what they saw.
Yes.
That made them say that. So it automatically primes the audience to see something there, to see something extraordinary and special in the way she comes across, in the way that she looks. So even if they don't on first feeling have that, they've been primed to look for it and see some kind of charisma or otherworldliness in there. Having said that, she's stunningly beautiful. Like,
yes. She is gorgeous.
yeah, like nothing broken, nothing missing, proportionate, all the things, yeah. Clearly an intelligent mind. So I'm sure part of him saying she's the most beautiful girl in the world had to do with the fact that she was really smart, which means that she was probably a great conversationalist. She was probably very charismatic, and she was probably very striking and attractive to artistic, intelligent men who probably found her not only pretty but engaging, and that the two of those things together made them feel like she was the most beautiful girl in the world, because not only is she pretty, but she's like smart and she's engaging with you and she's rising to the challenge, and understanding like how men operate in that way.
As one book noted, there were many stage door Johnnies wishing to court her. Stage door Johnnies. I love it.
Yeah.
And she turned down a lot of them who made their way backstage, but her biggest fan was also her most tenacious in his pursuit of her affection, and his name was Fritz Mandl. Mandl was a wealthy and influential figure in Austrian and European high society. He was, by some reports, and I'm not going to die on this hill, the richest man in Austria at the time. Like all richest men, he built his wealth through shady dealings and befriending fascists. He was known for owning the arms munitions manufacturing company Hirtenberger Patronenfabrik, which it was really big in the munitions industry. They were very deeply connected with political leaders. They got a bunch of military contracts.
So like BlackRock.
Yeah, kind of.
Like BlackRock owns everything.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So that's going to become troublesome for him later, because he is also of Jewish heritage. Mandel was described as a charismatic and enigmatic character who was often seen at glamorous social events and gatherings. He had a reputation for being a shrewd and ambitious businessman, and his wealth and connections allowed him to move in elite circles. and he used his influence to advance his business interests. It's networking. We just call that networking these days. But he was a piece of shit. But both can be true.
Yeah. I mean, it has all of the makings of a great sugar daddy.
The biggest lesson to learn, spoiler alert, is just don't marry a sugar daddy. That's not what you're there for.
Listen, if you marry for money, you will work every single day of your life.
Your lips to God's ears, Jesus Christ.
You know what's the hardest job in the world? Pretending to find a man interesting.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never done that.
People are like, Mom, that's the hardest job in the world. No, it's not. No, it's not. Have you ever had to pretend to find a millionaire fascinating? Oh, shit. That is a full-time job, and you will never be clean afterwards. I might be sometimes haunted by things I did in porn. I am absolutely mortified by things I've tolerated from fucking rich men and pretended to enjoy. Oh my God. Yeah.
Ugh.
No. That's the hardest form of sex work. I'm just going to be real. If you're a girl out there that's thinking about getting into the industry, just know that while the most socially acceptable sugar babying might seem appealing, it is the hardest form of sex work and will make you hate men the most. Like, if you want to turn gay, that is a great way to start your queer journey. Just start being a sugar baby. You will be fully radicalized against men within 6 months.
Just do escorting. You make more and it's less time and less bullshit.
Yep.
I would never encourage something. I mean that in the legal way, of course.
Yes. Well, I would never suggest anyone do anything against the law. I mean, like, it's always worked for me, but
your mileage may vary.
Yeah. Like that's what worked for me. I'm just but I can't promise anyone else is going to have the same result.
I think if you enter as a sugar baby, it's a lot less apparent how much it sucks if that's the only sex work you've ever done. Because it feels like soft and it feels like it's not really sex work. I'm just dating someone. Okay.
Yeah, it's like, oh, fuck. It can be so gross.
Yeah, but dating someone is exhausting. Fucking someone can be super tolerable.
You know, the thing is that when you're sugar babying, you have to be nice to men that you don't respect. You know they're beneath you. And you know they're beneath you because they're so delusional that they believe there's anything about them individually as people that is attractive. And there isn't. There isn't. See, a wealthy man that hires an escort respects you. He respects you as a business person and he respects your fucking time. And he is not delusional. He understands that he is paying for something that he does not want to bother with trying to earn somewhere else. And he is paying you for your time and he respects your time as a business person. He never tries to fucking haggle your prices. Whatever your price is, that's your price. In that sense, I can respect that man. I can have feelings. I will never be attracted to that man. I will never whatever. But like, I respect that man. And because I respect that man and his time, I'm going to be very nice in the encounter. I'm going to do all the things because we respect each other in a business arrangement. A sugar daddy is a delusional, pathetic loser. Absolutely no redeeming qualities. That is his nature, which is why he wants a sugar baby instead of an escort, because he wants someone that will fuel the delusion that there's anything organically about him that he's even remotely attractive. And so not only are you being nice to someone, you are being nice to someone that you do not respect. And that will erode and eat away at your self-esteem. It'll be 5 years later and you'll be thinking of some weird entitled shit they said that you let slide and you'll be like, I can't believe I let him get that Like some guy I was at
Yeah.
lunch with that's like, so like, but like it wouldn't be like a cash arrangement, right? Like, cause it's like, you know, like it's like a dating site. Like we're just like going to be together, but then it's like I'll always pick up the check. And I was like,
I don't need to. I can go to lunch with anyone and they'll pick up the check.
I was like, no, well, this is not Tinder. That is not what you signed up for. It's like 7 years later, and I'm still remembering that shit and just being like, look, like, oh, I let that person spend time with me. I didn't even sleep with that person, like, you know, because I'm a good businesswoman. But I was just like, I was just like, the level of like delusion. I was like, in what world do you think someone like me would be sitting across from you if there was not a cash incentive? You fucking lunatic. And
they still do that today, and it's the worst when they're attractive because they think that because they're probably the hottest guy on the site that you'll just want to fuck them for free, as though you forgot why you're there in the first place.
And trust me, like all those red pill influencers that are older gentlemen that talk about how they have young girlfriends and like they have whatever, I've seen all of their profiles on sugar dating sites. So that's where they're getting their young girlfriends. Like they're paying for them just like everybody else. Like there's like, it's an illusion. I digress.
Well, Mandel found himself drawn to the allure of Hedy's performances. Her stage presence left an indelible mark on him, and his fascination with her grew day by day. He began attending multiple performances of the play just to see her perform. He was captivated by her, and he was increasingly infatuated with her. Known for his immense wealth, he started showering Hedy with extravagant gifts, expensive jewelry, bouquets of flowers, and other lavish presents, all intended to win her affection and favor. Keep in mind, he has not met her yet. Now, I love the correct approach for any man trying to court a woman out of his league is to shower her with jewelry and flowers and expensive gifts. That's the right approach. But yeah, this feels alarming. I think by today's standards, when we have an understanding of what stalking is, it sort of puts a different lens on the situation.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It just sounds really pathetic. I'm sorry, like a 35-year-old man, like becoming obsessed with a 17-year-old girl. And like, it's just like gross and pathetic. You're an idiot. This is not going to turn out well for you.
Yeah. It does not.
I had a sense. He recognized the importance of making a favorable impression on her family. He made efforts to befriend and impress her parents, which was important in the conservative society of the time. This helped create a favorable impression of him within Hedy's family. After several months of pursuing Hedy, Mandel finally arranged private meetings with her. These meetings allowed him to get to know her better and discuss his intentions. After
real quick interruption.
Yeah.
If sugar daddies did that, I'm not saying I would respect them more, but I would feel like my time and attention was being more respected, and I would be a lot nicer to them.
Well, I mean, it did used to be back in the day that what you would do is you would come to court and you would actually court the person's parents. And then if the parents approved of the match, then you guys would be allowed to have chaperoned visits with each other to get to know each other. So it's not that uncommon at this time that someone that wanted to marry you would be someone that maybe you hadn't actually met before, but they would come to your parents, express interest. The parents would approve or disapprove. And then you would be like alone together, but under supervision. So you could like get to know each other. And then you might be allowed to like go on a walk together, things like that. And then a decision to marry would actually be pretty quick. It may seem stalkery by our standards, but I mean, that actually kind of was common practice. You might see a beautiful girl and you would like send her gifts and like a calling card and, you know, write her a letter or, you know, stuff like that. It was a lot more quaint.
It might have been more common at the time, but given how much agency those young women had over how they moved forward and progressed with that guy, it still feels, if not like stalking, then certainly as traumatizing to a young woman who doesn't necessarily have a lot of say. If it's a conversation between this wealthy man and her parents, where does her voice come in?
Well, exactly. And if this guy's like a super rich guy and he's a mover and shaker in society, and he comes to her parents and says, like, I'm into her. Who knows what kind of pressures they were putting on her to, and I'm sure they were probably like, listen, like, you're not going to do better than this guy. Like, this is kind of like, this is like the peak, right? Like, this is the richest guy there is. Like,
imagine that conversation through the lens of, you just brought shame to the family with that film.
Yeah.
And
this guy still wants
you're not turning this down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somehow. Right.
Yeah. So I imagine that was probably a very complicated scenario going on at home. There probably would have been a desire to have security because of the humiliation of the way the movie was taken. So there would probably have been some desire to get out from her parents' control, to reinstate her good standing in society, and to have the financial security of knowing that she's going to be well taken care of. And at the same time, she's going to like fix her reputation, because if he's the richest guy in town, if he says, I'm going to marry her, then no one is going to say that she's a slut ever again. Not because she's not a slut, but because if he says that this is my wife and I'm marrying her and we are not discussing this anymore, it is not going to be discussed anymore. So I could see how it would be very appealing on a lot of levels, because it's just sort of like answers all the questions.
Yeah. So it was through the lens of this particular relationship that I was reflecting on some of the stuff in her earlier teenage years, like going to Prague to chase this boy and this film. The film more than the boy, I would say, but I think the boy was why she argued for her own like independence on that trip. But that's why I think, like you were saying, making it apparent to her parents, putting it in front of them in a way that they couldn't deny that there's some element of perhaps realism to watching their baby girl fake coming on screen, that it was, you know, if this was the standard for the sort of class in society that they occupied, I can see that being a little bit more scandalizing, and also being a really good reason for her parents to invent any situation where that's not the situation, you know? Mm-hmm. They don't want to be in the same zip code as that idea about their daughter. Yeah. So any plausible deniability to enable themselves to not confront that was probably golden for them. The two began spending time together, and Heddy was intoxicated by his opulent lifestyle. Richest man in the fucking country. Oh, yeah. She's a teenager. Yeah. Of course she was. But she said, and this is a quote, "We drove everywhere in a black chauffeured limousine. One day, he whirled me up to his hunting estate, presenting me with 17 dogs and a friendly little staff of household companions that included cooks, butlers, gardeners, an upstairs maid, and a downstairs maid. And finally, he demanded that I marry him."
I mean, I think that sounds very sexy.
I would have said fuck yes in an instant.
Yeah, I think like, oh, an older, powerful man, and you're 17, 18 years old and like full of insecurities, but you've been told you're really beautiful. So you're like holding out for like the best suitor. And then this guy comes in with this like kind of crazy lifestyle. It says specifically, she was chasing a boy to Prague. Mm-hmm. This guy came to her, and he's not a boy. He's powerful and all the things. And I don't know if me and Heddy are similar, but like the first thing I ever wanted to be when I grew up was powerful. And I looked around and I saw the ways that women could be powerful was by being sexual, by being beautiful, or being in the orbit of a man that had a lot of power, that had some urge to protect you because he was your father, your brother, or your husband. It makes total sense.
I think in this situation, she's too young and inexperienced to have any context for what red flag behavior is. And this is before women had a lot of open discourse with each other about the shitty treatment they've gotten from men. So I think when she sees this, she sees a life like an incredible life. I think the way power was important to you, like being powerful, I think being special was important to her. And I think being the wife of the richest man in Austria, who has proven that he's so devoted and interested in her, that he has chased her and spent money on her and made her feel like a star, which she really needed to feel like a lot in her career, and especially after Ecstasy, she needed validation after that.
Yeah.
I can't see any reason why I would think to say no in this situation if I were in her shoes, at her age, at her level of experience, and her position in the world. This just seems like immediate upward mobility.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's not world wise enough to know that there are strings attached, that this is not given to you, handed to you, afforded to you for free, almost ever,
right,
from a man who wants to marry you, who barely knows you.
Yeah.
Hedy Lamarr and Fritz Mandl were married in a lavish ceremony in August of 1933. Bear in mind that her first performance in Sissy, the theater production, was on March 23rd, 1933.
Let me say, when a powerful man decides he wants something, if they wanted to, they would. Just for my baby hoes out there that are putting up with garbage, when a man has true power and a lot of money, they just go get it and they invest in it and they make it happen. There's never a doubt. You know what I mean? So just as a side note to the baby hoes out there,
I'm going to add on to that. It's not just about men who have power. If they have the ability to do something for you that they're not doing, like if they wanted to, they would.
Yeah.
When your partner won't show up for you in the most basic way, if they wanted to show up for you that way, they fucking would.
Yeah.
And gosh, that's easy to forget.
Men are not complicated. When they want something, they will let you know. They won't play hard to get. They won't be weird. They're kind of like dogs. They're very good at letting you know exactly how they feel if you know how to read the signs.
Yes. Hedy and Fritz Mandl's courtship was only 5 months and their engagement was only 8 weeks, which is, Sovereign, don't you think that's kind of swift and impulsive? Don't you, like, can you imagine a young woman being so swept away by someone who isn't good for her that she just marries him within like a few months?
That has happened to no one I know, and I've had zero experience with that. I've heard about it. I've heard about it, but
hey, look, here's a pretty picture of Hedy Lamarr.
Yeah,
and
let's look at that.
Awkward, weird photo of Fritz Mandl. Let's talk about anything except self-reflection.
He has something. He's got something. He's got something I could see would be very dashing, like in the 30s. The suit and like the sort of strong face. Like he's not ugly.
And for all the men that could be chasing her.
Let me put it this way. He's no Rudolph Valentino. He's no Errol Flynn. But he doesn't look like a fucking boot. He doesn't look like a goddamn elbow. He doesn't look like a fucking thumb, right? Like most of the time these dudes look like an octopus's apple. Fritz Mandl is like he's got nothing broken, nothing missing, strong jawline. You know, he's a gentleman of a certain age, but he looks very stylish and well kempt and all the things. Not a total disaster. I'm sure the young boys and actors she was chasing in Prague were, you know, like he doesn't look like he's rocking a six pack. Let me put it that way. He just looks like someone that, you know, spent his life being good at business.
He looks like the person that you settle down with for a little while after you kicked your last bassist boyfriend off of your couch.
Yeah. And then like afterwards, you're like, no, like he was really nice. It's just, you know, I just like didn't feel it. And then it turns out that they weren't nice. Like, and then you start describing their behavior and you realize like all the ways they actually weren't nice. Like,
and you actually weren't feeling it. What you were feeling was the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response. And you just had to fawn the whole time.
yeah. Yeah.
Because otherwise you didn't have a place to live.
Yeah. I think nice guys are their worst because they kind of prey on vulnerable people and catch someone right after a bad breakup. And then they kind of come in when that person's vulnerable and they're like, oh, I'm so nice and I do all the things. And then like once that person's feeling safe again, Then comes down the like, you can never leave the house without my approval. Let me look at your phone. Where were you? I want you to text me before and after you get to this place. Are you going to eat that? Do you really think you should eat that? Have you been to the gym lately? Like, should you go to the gym lately? Are you wearing that out of the house? I don't like that friend of yours. You know, she's a little too unstable for my liking. Why are you taking that tone with me? I never said that. It's a very slippery slope.
Oh my God. You've described so many relationships that I've been in, and I felt very triggered in the moment.
Yeah. Hedy represented what Fritz socially needed at that point in his life and career, a beautiful young wife. Mandel promised Hedy a lifelong marriage of opulence and wealth so long as Hedy agreed to give up her career, and she subsequently declined a Paramount Pictures contract. At the end of July...
I wonder how much of that was her saying she's going to turn down this contract that didn't exist anymore, just to, you know, pad her column of things that she's sacrificing. Like, look, I've got this big thing that was, I mean, she might have even had like some correspondence to back it up that disappeared after ecstasy, but, you know, sleight of hand.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's still... lifelong marriage of opulence and wealth, as long as you agree to give up your career. Like, it's so shitty.
I mean, you're becoming like chattel at that point. You're just becoming another fancy, opulent possession.
Yeah. But
the most beautiful girl in Europe, what a fantastic addition to his collection.
At the end of July, Hedy left the cast of Sissy. The wedding took place in Vienna's Baroque Karlskirche, followed by an extended honeymoon in Lido, Italy. Sometime prior, Hedy had converted to Roman Catholicism and Fritz Mandel to the Reformed Church. After the wedding, the couple settled in a grand estate at the Castle Schwarzenau in Schwarzenberg, Austria, where she had maids, jewels, finery, a whole staff, and wanted for almost nothing. She had every luxury, she later commented, except freedom. As a housewife of a rich businessman who had forsaken her own professional pursuits, her primary duties were to look beautiful and to be a great hostess. The couple held dinner parties with guests including Sigmund Freud, Mussolini, and Adolf Hitler. Bearing the lead. Mussolini apparently insisted on being seated next to her. While she wasn't interested in the general discussions at the dinner table, she paid particular attention to the discussions around weapons and manufacturing, her father having imbued her with a passion for learning how things work at a young age. In the documentary Bombshell, the Hedy Lamarr story, they talk about how she was never allowed to even visit his factories, though other sources note that she was forced to accompany him to business meetings where military technologies were discussed. These are key points to keep in mind and explore because there were some who have accused her of stealing these ideas and concepts for her eventual patent, but we'll touch on that in due time.
At one point, she talks about how she did visit the factory at least once, and then he banned her because she says, this is not a verbatim quote, he thought I was distracting to the workers of the factory. Oh, really? The boss's most beautiful girl in the world, teenage wife, is distracting these men surrounded by other men for 12 to 14-hour days?
Who, by the way, they can all go to a stag party and watch her film and see her naked and see her coming. You know?
How common is that? How common is it to be able to do that?
A movie like that? Honey.
No, I just mean like having a private viewing. Like, did they have the means in their homes?
That was mainly where it was going down. Yeah, I guarantee you that a print of ecstasy was one of the first things that ended up in heavy rotation at stag parties. Really, if we're talking about how porn is always on the bleeding edge of every technology, as soon as they could film things, they were filming porn privately and sharing it amongst each other and having men's parties where they were watching these films together. And I guarantee you, as soon as ecstasy came out, a cut of it was beginning to circulate. Several cuts of it were circulating all over Europe and throughout America. And men were having private viewing parties where they were going to hang out with the boys. Yeah.
So at this time, was it common to have that kind of like technology at home to be able to screen a film? I am a baby, and I thought that the ability to bring media home and engage with it privately was more of a like latter half of the 20th century development. So this is completely news to me.
Oh no, 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 no. Mm-mm. Um, people had reel to reels, and like hand cranking them.
You're saying they were hand cranking at the stag parties?
Yeah, it's any technology, but the first thing people are going to learn how to do with it is pervert it. And so it wouldn't be that everyone had the technology, but someone did. And then all of their friends would come over. So because someone had a film projector in their basement or in their garage. And then all the men would come over and they'd sit around and drink beer or sip brandy, and they would watch stag films, which by today's standards would be very tame, like not showing penetration or things like that. But I mean, like it was exciting. So I'm not saying it was common, like every Tom, Dick, and Harry had one, but it's sort of like, porn you find in the woods. It was like the porn you find in the woods, right? Like one person's dad had the nudie mag, and then he would take it to school, and then they would go find the woods out back of the school, and all the boys would look at it together. So it wasn't that everyone had a subscription to Playboy, but if one boy's father had a subscription, then every boy in the school functionally had a subscription to Playboy. And stag films were the same thing. Like if one person had a projector at home and a stag film, that was now the most popular guy in town. But
that was probably the incentive for getting it.
Well, keep in mind, like you're thinking in terms of like, I go to movies, I turn on my TV and there's programming. Like, so you're coming at it from that, right? But you have to remember that film came before television. And that film originally was you would go to a theater and someone would have a projector screen and you would have an in-house piano player. Obviously there were theaters, but in a lot of more rural places, you'd have like a theater in the town and there'd be a projector there, and whatever movies they could get is like what they would play. And if someone could get a blue movie, yeah, they're fucking watching that shit.
That's a packed house.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I guess I was thinking of it more in terms of like a personal, like at home technology, and not something that like, what the fuck else are you going to do? Somebody got a hold of this thing.
Yeah.
That means that person has the means.
Or someone works at the theater on like for 10 cents on the weekends, and they're like, come on in, we're just going to watch it after hours. Like,
yeah. Okay.
People are horny. Like that, like there's like nothing like death and taxes, like nothing will kill cockroaches. People will never stop being horny. Like being horny is the biggest indicator and the biggest pusher of progress. Is like,
and survival.
Someone was like, but can I fuck it?
That's how I approach technology. Or in my porn days, it was like, can I fuck with this, or can someone watch me fuck with this? So that's how I got into VR, because the answer was clearly a resounding yes.
I guarantee you, as soon as ecstasy came out, there were tons of copies that were being passed around in town to town and being displayed in people's garages or their basements or in theaters on after hours, like that. It would absolutely, that was happening. There was a woman that did her PhD in erotic literature, especially like Marquis de Sade and Retief in the late 1700s. And she got all this attention because she realized that original erotica was written to be read in public and in groups. That's why it's presented in a question answer format in so many of them. That's why it's written that way. Most people know what de Sade is, but they've never actually read de Sade. But if you I have not. If you actually read de Sade, a lot of the stories are kind of these weird question answer kind of formats, because they were designed to be read in a group setting, like in public. Sex and sexuality was very much part of the public sphere, really until the Victorian period, when it sort of went underground. But sex from the beginning of time has always been kind of a communal activity. having communal sex situations like reading erotica or things like that, it also created like group bonding, but also helped set like sexual norms. Like, this is what it's okay to jerk off to. This is weird to jerk off to. Does that make sense?
The shine wore off pretty quickly for Hedy. Her husband was a megalomaniac who dictated her life and kept her in a place of financial desperation and social isolation. He grew jealous of the way that men looked at her, and he kept her on a very short leash, largely keeping her on the estate grounds or under the watchful eye of the staff. Just like you said earlier, well, where are you going? Do you really need to go out? Why do you need to go out? That kind of shit.
Yep.
To alleviate the pressures with her role as this dude's fucking wife, she sought solace in life's simpler pleasures. So she told her friend about this thing that happened at their fancy house. That kind of gives you a little bit of an insight here. So her friend said, one day she decided to entertain herself, speaking of Hedy, by taking all 16 toilet seats from the house out onto the lawn that swept down to the lake to paint them in the sun, wrote her friend. As she was beginning the last one, she spotted a long line of black Mercedes limos in the distance coming up the long drive to the house. Her husband had not bothered to call and warn her that he was bringing important guests for the weekend. Important guests meaning a line of black fucking Mercedes. You didn't think to make a phone call? Okay.
Listen, I'm going to have a group of people that are going to really need to take a So basically what happens is one day she's going to do a project because Hedy likes projects. This is what we're going to learn about Hedy. Hedy likes a project. Hedy likes to take shit apart, put it back together, that kind of thing, right? Hedy used to design her own plastic surgery procedures. That's how fucking anal she was, and how, like, I think you could do it this way. Like, okay, bitch.
And she was right.
Oh, and she was right. But okay, bitch.
And they refined their approach because she was she was like,
they
look,
talk about
I'm going to
Wi-Fi.
look better if you do this.
They talk about Wi-Fi, but what about the fucking temporal lift? Which is the results are amazing. I plan on getting one. And she did that. She said, I've noticed that the way the fascia attaches to the muscle attaches to this, that to put this here, what you actually want to do is put friction here. She was a smarty pants. And I'm like, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, whatever. Plastic surgery, icon. Change the game. You're welcome. You're welcome, beautiful women over the age of 50. You're welcome. She did that for you.
No.
That was love.
No. You're welcome, everybody on Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. The reason she started talking to the guy that she made that her co-founder of that patent was because she wanted to get his insights about the plastic surgery. But she basically said, I'd like to talk to you about my glands. Which sounds both very
sexual and very
unerotic.
Weird. Yeah.
And also sexy. Like, it sounds like a dude trying to come on to you.
Well, I think we've figured out that she's neurospicy. So basically what happens is, because she likes a project, and I think she was doing a little sabotage, as they say. She decides, as she's stuck here on her palatial jail cell, she's like, you know what I'm going to do? There are 16 bathrooms in this residence, and I'm going to take the toilet seat cover, like the toilet seats, from all 16 of these bathrooms, and I'm going to take them out to the side of the lake where it's nice and sunny, and I'm going to paint them. I'm going to paint the toilet seats. Like, this was an act of sabotage. This was intentional. I guarantee she knew that the guests were coming. She's been left.
She could have left one. She could have left one.
She's been left
of the 16.
Like, you can't convince me it's not sabotage, because what person goes, I'm going to take out every single toilet seat and paint it?
I would take the toilet seat off, and then I would get a new one that's clean. I would paint it so there's a big, like, Baphomet pentagram on it, and then I would use glitter Mod Podge on top of it. And then when you lift the lid, at various points in my life, it would change. But for example, when I was in Los Angeles, it said, if it's yellow, let it mellow. California's in a drought. So I did paint the toilet seats in my homes. I think I probably bought the new one and painted it before I did this switcheroo.
I visit Ella several times a year and go to Austin, and I stay there for a few weeks, and we have a good time. So she had recently moved into a new apartment, and I came in to visit her. I was very sad. I was going through a lot of shit. I was sobbing hysterically every 5 minutes.
You were sobbing, Syre.
I was sobbing, Syre. Like, I was not in a good place. I was looking into the abyss. I was not optimistic. Get to her house. I walk in to her bathroom because I needed to take a shit. And she has an elevated toilet seat with a toilet warmer. It has a whole control panel on the side. It's got a bidet. It will wash your asshole in hot water, lukewarm water, cold water. It will vibrate the fucking seat for you. It will warm the seat for you. You can decide how much you want to flush, how much fucking stream you want touching your pee and your asshole. This is gourmet level grooming. And as I'm sitting in there taking a shit in my best friend's toilet, contemplating suicide, genocide, homicide, something. I mean, I'm at the end of my rope. I'm on the cliff's edge. There is a tiny string of anything just holding me to reality and keeping me alive. And I'm sitting on her toilet. I look around and I thought to myself, man, Ella is a bitch that takes shit seriously. I walked out and I was like, I love this bitch. I was just like, oh man, like she takes her shit seriously. And I respect that. Like, god damn, like she's looking out for herself. That's fucking awesome. And also, like, my apple has never been cleaner, crispier, more pristine, pinker.
It's because it shows when someone is cared for.
Yeah. I was just like,
it shines through.
Yeah. Like, it made me want to go sit on someone's face. I was like, but have you seen? This shit's crispy. Like, come on. Like, this shit is squeaky. Which is amazing that you would do that for your friends that have to shit, because I know that you don't have to.
I'm like a vampire who keeps snacks on hand.
So anyway, yeah, toilet seats. She pulls them all out to paint them. I think she did that.
Respect.
I think she did that knowing that he was having company, and then was like, oh, did I do that? Like, I'm sorry that none of your illustrious guests have anywhere to shit.
Guess they're too precious. Wow, I thought they were military men who were made of something more, but I guess they need a precious toilet seat. I thought they were shitting in, you know, foxholes or fucking whatever. Go off.
You may wonder how the richest man in Austria put his wife in a place of financial desperation. He simply wouldn't let her have access to cash. That's a big no-no if you're in a sex work. He had credit accounts with the stores around town, so she just charged her purchases to the store without ever actually touching cash. Today, we call this financial control and economic abuse, but at the time, it was just marriage. Hedy, in an act of oppositional defiance, decided to push the credit limits of her accounts all around town. She went absolutely fucking ham on designer clothes, jewelry, furs, and more, she explains. My program of buying went on for weeks, and during it, I became a new person. I was gayer, happier, and at the same time, imbued with this new secret purpose, more amenable to my husband's wishes, all of which led him, far from suspecting my true design, to do that which I had hoped he would do, namely, give me an allowance of my own. Hedy, he said, your purchases are staggering even to a man of wealth. I will not have this go on. I shall therefore stop your credit and give you cash for your needs. This allowance is not comparable to your extravagance, but it must from now on suffice. And I had won.
And don't we fucking love that for her? The man tries to keep her down. by giving her a fucking credit limit. And she's like, what credit limit?
Yeah.
All I see is great shit to buy. And the more you suck, the more I need to buy.
Yeah.
I've lived there. It's an awful place to take up residence, but it is very shiny and accommodating when you are there. At some point during their marriage, when ecstasy screamed at a film festival in Italy, Mandel concluded that it was simply unacceptable for the bulging eyes of random theatergoers to see his wife's nude body on screen. He reportedly spent $280,000 at the time, which today, or in 2021, apparently would be $5.86 million, in an unsuccessful attempt to suppress the film Ecstasy by trying to purchase every existing print. What's wrong with that story, Sovereign? You buy every print. Surely that's it, right?
For a brilliant man, not understanding that they can simply print more is kind of wild. So what he invested in the first NFT.
Basically, yeah.
His first
and
non-fungible.
That, oh, babies first. Yeah. Babies first.
Babies first non-fungible token.
This man was so eager to be the only man who could own her naked body in his head that he spent almost $6 million to take her scenes offline for her. And he's a piece of shit, front and center, like start to finish. He's a real, look, the man, I wrote this. Look, the man was by all accounts a raging, flaming, poisoned prick. But Savi, can you imagine a man who is so crazy about you that he personally buys out every scene, every contract you've ever had with every adult company that you've ever shot?
I literally dream of someone that could erase my entire presence from the internet. Honestly, I think I'm good.
Yeah,
I think nobody needs to know that. Like, I personally think that Elon bought Twitter as a gesture of goodwill towards humanity. By driving it into the ground, it will disappear and become irrelevant. And all of our tweets for like the past 15 years will disappear.
This show was produced by Joshua Anderson, for whom we have so much gratitude.
Yes. You can find us on TikTok at ILL REPUTE Pod, at Call Me Savi, at Ella Darling X. You can find us on Twitter at ILL REPUTE Pod, at Sovereign Syre, at Ella Darling. You can find us on Instagram at We Are ILL REPUTE, at Sovereign_Syre, and at Ella Darling 69. You can find us on Facebook at ILL REPUTE Pod, podcast. And you can find us on YouTube at ILL_REPUTE.
And you can find some pretty bitchin' merch that Sovereign has designed at importantadult.com. I wear these shirts, whether they're related to our podcast or not. I try to rock your shirts as much as I can. It's my uniform.
I do too.
I always wear you on my tits.
I bought my boyfriend a couple shirts, and then now I'm the one that exclusively wears them because they're so comfortable. They're so good.
I bought my boyfriend a shirt, and it better be the only fucking thing he wears when he gets here on Monday. Like, if he's wearing anything else, I'm not picking him up. I'm leaving. Like, oh, enjoy the airport. I hope there's good food.
All right. I love you.
I love you so much.
I love you so much. All right.
All right.
Okay. All right. Bye, baby.